Skulduggery Pleasant, Book 1, Chapter 10, The Gal in Black. Stephanie was awakened the next morning by the stereo playing very loudly indeed. Her dad had been trying to tune into a news station, and the volume knob had snapped off, so a quiet little traffic report was instead Ranger's Ride of the Valkyries at full blast. He had lost the remote control down the back of the sofa and had the first clue how to turn the stereo off. The music reverberated through the floor and into walls, and there was no escaping its sheer power. By the time her mother yanked the plug out of the socket, Stephanie was wide awake. Her mother poked her head in to say goodbye as her parents went to work. Stephanie threw on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. While she waited for Skulduggery to arrive, she thought about what would be a good name for her to take. Skulduggery had explained how the actual taking of a new name gets a seal around the old one, so if Stephanie took the name Crystal Hammer, she didn't plan on it, then the name Stephanie Ansley would be instantly immune to any controlling spells. But while she only went by her given name, she was vulnerable. If she was to have a new name, it would have to be a name that she wouldn't be embarrassed about in years to come. It would have to be something classy and also something she felt comfortable with. He had told her about people who had taken names like Razor and Phoenix, and how he wouldn't advise anyone to take a name that seemed cool. He'd once been introduced to a woman who had put on a little weight over the ears, and her hair was a little windswept, and she had spinach in her teeth, and he was told her name was Jet. Jet did not suit this woman the same way Razor did not suit the short, fat man who had taken that as a name. She looked up from her desk as Skulduggery knocked. She opened the window. "I thought girls were supposed to be tidy," he said as he peered in. Stephanie kicked some underwear onto her bed and ignored the comment. "You okay out there?" "I've been perched on worse roofs, believe me. My parents have gone to work, you know. You could have just used the door. Doors are for people with no imagination." "Are you sure no one saw you? The last thing I need is for a neighbor to be passing and see you climbing up the side of the house." "I was careful, don't you worry, and I have something for you." He gave her a short piece of chalk. Thank you," she said slowly. "Go to your mirror." "I'm sorry?" "Go to your mirror and draw this symbol on it." He handed her a small card that showed an eye in a circle with a wavy line through it. "What's this for?" "It's to help you. Go on." She frowned and then went to the mirror. "No," Skulduggery said, "a full-length mirror. Do you have one?" Yeah," Stephanie said, with still no clue why she was doing this. She opened her wardrobe and used the chalk to copy the symbol onto the mirror on the other side of the door. When she was done, she handed the card and the chalk back to Skulduggery. He thanked her and put them away, and she then looked at the mirror. "Surface speak, surface feel, surface think, surface real." He looked at her again. "Could you wipe the symbol off now, please?" "What's going on? What are you doing? Did you just cast a spell on my mirror?" "Yes." "Could you wipe the symbol off?" "Well, what does the symbol do?" she asked as she used her sleeve to erase the chalk. "You'll see," he answered. "Are you wearing a watch?" "My watch broke. I wore it swimming. I thought it was waterproof." "Was it?" "As it turned out, no. Why do you need to know the time?" "Oh, I don't. Touch the mirror." She narrowed her eyes. "Why?" "Touch it." Stephanie hesitated and then did it as he said and reached out, touching her finger slightly against the mirror. But when she pulled back, her reflection did not. She watched in amazement as her reflection blinked as if awakening from a trance and dropped its arm to its side and looked around. Then, very slowly, it stepped out through the mirror. "Oh my God," Stephanie said, moving back as her reflection joined her in the room. "Oh my God," she said again because she really couldn't think of anything else to say. Skulduggery looked out on from the window. "You will carry on with your life while you are away, so you won't be missed." Stephanie stared. "She's me!" "Not she, it. And it isn't you. It's a surface copy. It walks like you, talks like you, behaves like you, and it should be enough to fool your parents and anyone else it comes into contact with. When you return, it will go back into the mirror, and the experience and the memories it has made transferred to you. So I can be in two places at once?" "Precisely. It can't spend too long in other people's company, or they'll start to notice things aren't quite right, and it would never fool a mage, but it's ideal for your needs." "Wow." Stephanie peered more closely at the reflection. "Say something." The reflection looked back at her. "What do you want me to say?" Stephanie laughed suddenly and then clapped a hand over her mouth. "You sound just like me," she said through her fingers. "I know. Do you have a name?" "My name is Stephanie." "No, a name of your own." Skulduggery looked at her, shook his head. "Remember, it's not a real person. It has no thoughts or feelings of its own. They're all imitations of yours. It's a reflection. That's all it is. Operating instructions are as follows. It cannot change out of the clothes you're wearing when you cast it, so make sure you're not wearing anything with a logo or insignia. They'll come out backward. Make sure you're not wearing a watch or a ring. They'll appear on the opposite hand. Apart from that, it's pretty simple. Wow, we should go. She turned to him, frowning. Are you sure they won't realize it's not me? You'll stay out of other people's way for most of the time, and I'll try to avoid any long conversations. Even if your parents corner it and bombard it with questions, they'll just think you're acting strange. Stephanie chewed her lip, and then shrugged. I suppose jumping to the conclusion that my inflection come to life is a bit unlikely. You'd be surprised how many things we get away with that fall into the category of unlikely. Are you ready to go? I suppose I am. Do you want to leave by door or window? Doors are for people with no imagination, she grinned. She joined Skulduggery on the sill and took one look back. The reflection was standing in the middle of the room, perfectly still. Bye, Stephanie said. Bye. The reflection responded and tried to smile for the first time. It looked kind of eerie. Stephanie climbed out and hung on to the Skulduggery as he jumped, displacing the air beneath them to act as a cushion. They landed gently and made it to the end of the road without any neighbors seeing them. But when they reached the pier, Stephanie's face fell. She stared in horror as the Skulduggery marched onward. What the hell is that? My car, he answered, leaning against it with his arms folded. The sea breeze ruffled his wig beneath his hat. She stared at him, at the car, and then at him again. What happened to the Bentley? She asked. His head tilted. I don't know if you noticed, but it was ever so slightly dinged. And where is it now? It's getting fixed. Right, that's a good answer. Fix is a good answer. But I don't know, I'm kind of drawn back to my original question. What the hell is that? Skulduggery was leaning against a canary yellow hatchback with lime green seat covers. That's my replacement car, he said proudly. It's hideous. I don't mind it, actually. Well, you're wearing a disguise, so no one will recognize you anyway. That might have something to do with it. When will the Bentley be fixed? That's the nice thing about living in a world of magic and wonder. Even our most extreme car repairs happen in less than a week. She glared at him. A week? Not a week, he said quickly. 6 days. 7 out of 5. Definitely 4. I'll call him. Tell him I'll pay the extra. She was still glaring. Day after tomorrow, he said quietly. Her shoulders sagged. Do we really have to ride around in this? Think of it as an adventure, he said brightly. Why should I do that? Because if you don't, you'll just become really, really depressed. Trust me. Now hop in. Skulduggery hopped in. Stephanie dragged her feet around to the other side and more kind of fell in. She squirmed down in the lime green seat as much as she could as they drove through Haggard. There was a parcel in the back seat, wrapped in brown paper, and was tied with a string. Beside that was the black bag. Is that the gear for breaking into the vault? Is that where we're going? Well, to answer your first question, yes. That bag contains all the equipment needed for a beautifully executed break-in. To answer your second question, no. That is not where we're going. Before I get to introduce you to a life of crime, I get to introduce you to the Elder Mages. Crime sounds more fun, and indeed it is. Though I never condone crime in any of its forms, except when I do it naturally. So why are we delaying the fun? Who are these Elder Mages, and what do they want? They've heard that I've been dragging a perfectly nice young lady into all manner of trouble, and they want to admonish me for it. Tell them some of their business. Well, while I admire your moxie, what's moxie? I'm afraid that won't work too well with these fellows. One thing you have to remember about the Elder Mages out there, really old sorcerers. Well, yes, worked that out all by myself. You must be so proud. So why do you have to report to them? What, do you work for them? In a way. The Elders pass the laws, and they have people who enforce the laws, and there are only a few of us who actually investigate the breaking of those laws. Murders, robberies, and a couple of kidnappings, the usual. But while I might be freelance, most of my work and my money comes from the elders. So if they want to wag their fingers at you, I have to stand there and be wagged at. So why do they want me to be there? Aren't I the innocent young girl being led astray? See, I don't really want them to view you as the innocent young girl. I want them to view you as the rebellious, insubordinate, troublesome rapscallion who made herself my partner. Then maybe they'll take pity on me. Wait, do they even know I'm coming with you? No, but they like surprises. Almost always. Maybe I should wait in the car. In this car? Ah, good point. Stephanie, we both know something serious is going on, but yet the Elder Mages have refused to consider this, and their precious truce might be in jeopardy. And why would they believe me and not you? Because I go to them loaded with baggage. I have a history and some might say an agenda. Besides, tales of horror are almost always more effective when coming from a lady. I'm no lady, he shrugged. You're the closest I've got. Skulduggery had another surprise for her as they drove. He pulled into a fast food place and nodded towards the parts in the back seat. What's that? She asked. What do you think it is? It looks like a parcel. Then that's what it is. But what's inside it? If I tell you, I deprive the parcel of its whole reason to be. She sighed. And what is its reason to be? To be opened, of course, and to reveal what's inside. You are so annoying, she muttered, reaching back and taking the parcel. It was soft to the touch. She looked at Skulduggery. The clothes? I'm saying nothing. Guess you made the clothes already. I didn't think he was going to make them at all. Not after, the argument. Skulduggery shrugged and started humming, and she sighed and took the parcel out of the yellow car and walked into the fast food restaurant, making her way to the toilets at the back. Once secured inside the stall, she pulled open the string, and the parcel unfolded before her. It was the clothes. They were the deepest black, made of a material she had never seen before. She got changed quickly, noting how perfectly everything fit, and stepped out of the stall to admire herself in the mirror. The trousers and the tunic, a sleeveless garment with silver latches, were pretty good by themselves, and the boots fit as though she'd been wearing them for years. But it was the coat that completed the picture. 3/4 length, shaped especially for her, made of a material so black it nearly shimmered. She resisted the temptation to leave her other clothes on the toilet and wrapped them in the brown paper and left the restaurant. Surprise! Skulduggery said when she was out back in the canary car. It's the clothes! She looked at him. You are so weird. 20 minutes later, they were walking into the Waxworks Museum. The building was old and dire need of repair, and the street wasn't much better. Stephanie didn't say a word as they paid and went wandering through the dark corridors, surrounded on both sides by imitation celebrities and fictional characters. She had been here 2 or 3 times as part of school trips. When she was younger, she couldn't see the point of visiting, and now they hung back from a small group of tourists until they were certain that they were alone, and only then did Stephanie say anything. What are we doing here? We're here to visit the Elders' Sanctuary, Skulduggery replied. And are the elders made of wax? I like coming here, he said, taking off his sunglasses and ignoring her question. It's very liberating. He took off his hat and wig and pulled a scarf from his neck. Stephanie looked around nervously. Aren't you afraid someone might see? Not in the slightest. Well then, maybe we should go talk to the elders then. Good idea. Skulduggery moved to one side of the corridor and traced his hand around over the wall. Where is it? He muttered. Bloody idiots keep changing it. The tourist came back around the corner and Stephanie went to drag Skulduggery out of sight, but it was too late. They had already seen him. A small American boy left his parents' side and walked right up to him. Skulduggery was frozen to the spot. Who is that supposed to be? The boy asked, frowning slightly. Stephanie hesitated. Now the entire tour was looking at her, including the tour guide. This is... Stephanie racked her brain for a likely sounding explanation. This is Sammy Skeleton, the world's worst detective. Never heard of him. A poke. He shrugged and lost interest, and Stephanie watched the tours move on. When they were out of sight, Skulduggery swiveled his head to her. World's worst detective? He asked. She shrugged and hid her grin, and Skulduggery rumped good-naturedly and went back to running his hand along the wall. He figured out what he was looking for and pressed inward. A section of the wall slid open to reveal a hidden passage. Wow, Stephanie said. The sanctuary is here. I used to come here when I was little, never knowing that beneath your feet was a world of magic and wonder. Exactly. He tilted his head slightly. Better get used to that feeling. She followed him in, and the walls sealed shut behind them. The stairway downward was lit by torches that flickered in their brackets, but the closer they got, to wherever it was they were going, the brighter it became. They emerged into the gleaming foyer of the sanctuary. It would have reminded Stephanie of the lobby of a high-tech company building, all marble and varnished wood paneling, had it not been for the lack of windows. 2 men stood guard against the far wall, hands clasped behind them, dressed entirely in gray, with long coats and some sort of helmet with a visor that covered the entire face. Each had a scythe, a wicked-looking blade on a 5-foot staff strapped to its back. A slight man in a suit came out to greet them. Detective, he said, you are early. The council is not ready to convene. I could show you to the waiting area if you wish. Actually, I might take this opportunity to show our guests around. Is that all right? The man blinked. I'm afraid access is strictly limited, as well you know. I was just going to show my friend the propository, Skulduggery said. The book, in fact. I see. Well, as an administrator of the sanctuary, I would have to accompany you naturally. Wouldn't have it any other way. The administrator bowed and spun on his heel and led them down the adjoining corridor. They passed more people in gray uniforms as they walked. Stephanie was getting used to dealing with people with no eyes and no expressions, but there was still something about them that unnerved her. Skulduggery, living skeleton though he was still fundamentally human, and yet these people who merely wore helmets to hide their faces seemed to her much more sinister. "Who are they?" she whispered as they walked. "Cleavers," Skulduggery replied in a low voice. "Security guards, enforcers, an army rolled into one. Dangerous individuals. Be glad they're on our side." She did her best not to look at them as they passed. "Where are we going?" "I'm taking you to see the Book of Names," Skulduggery said. "Some say it was created by the ancients, but the truth is no one knows who really made it, or how it was made. It lists the names of every living person on Earth, the given name, the taken name, if and when a name is taken, and a true name. Every time a baby is born, a new name appears in these pages. Every time someone dies, the name fades away." Stephanie looked at him. "So my true name is in that book, and is mine, and is everyone's. Isn't that dangerous? If someone got their hands on it, they'd be able to rule the world." She thought a few moments passed. I felt ridiculous even saying that. The administrator glanced over his shoulder as he walked. "Not even the elders opened the book. It's too powerful. It can corrupt too easily. But they can't find a way to destroy it. It can't be torn, it can't be burned, it can't be damaged by any means that we have at our disposal. If the legends are true and the book was created by the ancients, then it stands to reason that only the ancients could destroy it. The elders, for their part, see it as their responsibility to protect it, to keep it away from prying eyes." They reached the set of double doors. The administrator waved his hand, and the heavy doors swung slowly open. They walked into the repository, a large room with marble pillars, which, as Skulduggery explained, has some of the rarest and most unusual magical artifacts in existence. They passed row upon rows of shelves and tables, on which lay items so bizarre they defied description. The administrator pointed out one of the strange of these, a two-dimensional box that held wonders to sate the most jaded of appetites, but which only existed if approached from a right angle. In contrast to this clutter, however, the center of the room, which was empty save for the pillar, and on that pillar, a book. "That's the Book of Names?" Stephanie asked. "Yes, it is." "I thought it'd be bigger." "It's as big as it needs to be. No more, no less. And it's okay to leave it out in the open like that. It's not as vulnerable as you might think. When it's placed here, the security arrangements did cause the elements some concern. How would it be protected? Guards can be overcome, a locked door can be unlocked, a wall can be broken, a shield can be pierced. So what? They decided not to bother? Actually, they came up with the most ingenious defense. Willpower. Sorry? The book is protected by the will of the elders. Stephanie wasn't sure if he was joking or not. "See for yourself," the administrator said. "Take the book." "Me?" You won't be harmed." Stephanie glanced at Skulduggery, but he gave no indication as to what she should do. Finally, she had just turned and started walking towards it. Her eyes darted from one side of the room to the next. She saw about trapdoors and and immediately started examining the floor she was walking on. What form did willpower take? She hoped it wasn't bullets or anything painful like that. She was madly annoyed that she was even doing this, walking right up into whatever trap the elders had set up, and doing so willingly. For what? To prove a point that wasn't even hers? She didn't even want to take the book. The whole thing was ridiculous. She glanced back, saw the administrator standing there with a placid expression on his face, obviously anticipating what was about to happen. Whatever was going to pop out in front of her to stop her from taking the precious book. She stopped walking. If he wanted the book, he could get it himself. She turned and walked right back again. The administrator appeared at her. "You didn't take it," he said. Stephanie forced herself to remain polite. "No, I didn't, but I'll take your word for it that's well protected. When you started walking, you wanted to take the book, yes? I suppose so. Then why didn't you?" "Because I changed my mind." "Because you didn't want to take it anymore?" "Well, yeah, so?" "This is the will of the elders. No matter how badly you want that book in your hands, the closer you get, the less you want it. It doesn't matter if you want it for yourself, if you want it because you were ordered to take it, or because your very life depends on it. With every step you take, your indifference towards the book increases. No matter who you may be or what power you may have. Even Meritorious himself couldn't get close to it." She looked at him, taking it all in. Finally, she had to say it. There was no other way she couldn't. "That's very impressive." "It is, isn't it?" The administrator turned, and his head a little as if hearing something. "The council is ready for you now. Please come this way." They walked into an oval-shaped room and stood facing a large door. There was only one light source from somewhere overhead, and the edges of the room remained in relative darkness. "The elders will be but a moment," the administrator said, and walked quietly away. "They always do this," Skulduggery said. "Keep people waiting. My headmaster does the same thing whenever someone's called to his office. He thinks it makes him look important. Does it work? It makes him look late." The door opened, and an old man entered. He had short, white hair and a tightly cropped beard. He was tall, taller than Skulduggery. He wore the suit color of granite, and as he walked, Stephanie became aware of the shadows to his right. They seemed to shift and stretch alongside him, and she watched as more of them reached over from corners of the room to join the mass. The shadow suddenly rose up from the floor and melted into an elderly woman in black. She felt his step beside the tall man, and their footsteps slowed as they neared. A third person faded up from nothing, materials right out of thin air on the other side of the tall man. He looked a little younger than the others, and he wore a sky blue suit with a jacket of which was struggling to contain his hefty paunch. Stephanie looked at the elder mages, and the elder mages looked at Stephanie. "Skulduggery," the tall man said eventually, his voice deep and resonant. "Trouble follows you when you're awake, doesn't it?" "I wouldn't say follows," Skulduggery answered. "It more kind of sits around and waits for me to get there." A man shook his head. "This is your new partner, then?" "Indeed it is," Skulduggery answered. "No taken name? Not yet." "That is something, at least." The man shifted his focus to Stephanie. "I am ancient Meritorius, Grand Mage of this council. Beside me are Morano Crow and Sagacious Tome. Can I assume that because you have not picked a name that you do not intend to involve yourselves in our affairs for very much longer?" Stephanie's throat was dry. "I'm not sure." "See?" Skulduggery said. "Insubordinate." "You've been placed in a dangerous situation," Meritorius continued. "Surely you would prefer to go back to the safety of your normal life." "What's so safe about it?" Skulduggery chimed in. "Rebellious." "I mean," Stephanie continued, "I could get knocked down crossing the road tomorrow. I could get mugged tonight. I could get sick next week. It's not safe anywhere." Meritorius raised an eyebrow. "Well, this is true. In your normal life, you haven't had to deal with sorcerers and murder attempts." The elders were gazing at her with an interest. "Maybe," she admitted, "but I don't think I can just forget about all this." Skulduggery shook his head sadly. "Troublesome." The woman, Morano Crow, took over. "Detective, you have petitioned the council on numerous occasions concerning a supposed threat to the troops." "I have." "And as of yet, you have failed to produce evidence." "The girl standing beside me is my evidence. Twice she has been attacked, and twice her attacker was after Key." "What Key?" asked Sagacious Tome. Skulduggery hesitated. "Mr. Pleasant?" "I believe the attacker's master to be Serpine." "What Key, detective?" "Serpine is ordering attacks on civilians. That is a clear breach of the truce, and the council has no choice but to—" "The key, Mr. Pleasant. What does it open?" Stephanie glanced at Skulduggery's indestructible badges and thought she could detect hints of frustration in the small movements he was making. "I believe the key will lead Serpine to the recovery of the scepter of the ancients." "I never know when you're joking, Skulduggery," Meritorius said, starting to smile. "I hear that a lot." "Are you aware that the scepter is a fairy tale?" "I'm aware that it is thought to be, yes, but I'm also aware that Serpine has been working on tracking it down, and I believe Gordon Edgley may have had it." "Nefarian Serpine is now an ally," said Sagacious Stone. "We live in a time of peace." "We live in a time of fears," Skulduggery said, "when we're too scared of upsetting the status quo to ask the questions we need to be asking." "Skulduggery," Meritorius said, "we all know what Serpine did. We know the atrocities he committed in the name of his master, Malevolent, and for his own gains. For as long as the truce holds, we cannot act against him without a good cause. He ordered attacks on my companion. You have no proof. He murdered Gordon Edgley. You have no proof. He is after the scepter, which doesn't even exist." Meritorius shook his head sadly. "I'm sorry, Skulduggery, but there's nothing we can do." "As for the girl," said Morana, "we had hoped her involvement in all this would be minimal." "She's not going to tell anyone," Skulduggery said quietly. "Maybe so, but if she takes one more step deeper into this world, it may be impossible for her to step out again. We want you to consider this carefully, detective. Consider what it would mean." Skulduggery gave a slight nod of acknowledgement, but said nothing. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. You may leave." Skulduggery turned and walked out, Stephanie right behind him. The administrator hurried over. "I know the way out," Skulduggery growled as the administrator backed off. They passed the cleavers, standing still as the wax bottles above them climbed the staircase out of the sanctuary. Skulduggery donned his disguise, and they walked back to the canary car in silence. They had almost reached it when he stopped and turned his head. "What's wrong?" Stephanie asked. He didn't answer. She couldn't see anything beneath his disguise, and Stephanie looked around, paranoid. It appeared to be a normal street, populated by normal people doing normal things. Granted, the street had potholes and the people were scruffy, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. Then she saw him. A tall man, broad and bald, his age impossible to gauge. He walked towards him like he had all the time in the world, and Stephanie stood by Skulduggery as they walked. "Mr. Pleasant," the man said when he had reached them. "Mr. Bliss," Skulduggery responded. Stephanie looked at the man. He radiated power. His pale blue eyes settled on her. "And who must be the girl who attracts all sorts of attention?" Stephanie couldn't speak. She didn't know what she would have said, but she did know that her voice would have been thin and reedy if she had tried. There was something about Mr. Bliss that made her want to curl up and cry. "Haven't seen you in a while," Skulduggery said. "I heard you'd retired." There was something peaceful about Mr. Bliss's eyes, but it wasn't the calming kind of peaceful. It wasn't a peaceful that comforted you and made you feel safe. It was another kind of peaceful. The one that promised you no more pain, no more joy, no more anything. Looking at him was like looking into a void with no beginning and no ending. Oblivion. "The elders asked me to return," Mr. Bliss says. "The urges are troubling times after all." "Is that so?" The two men who had Serpine under surveillance were found dead a few days ago. He's up to something that he doesn't want the elders to know about. Skulduggery paused. "Why doesn't Mary tell me this?" "The truce is a house of cards, Mr. Pleasant. If it is disturbed, it will all come down. And you are known for your disturbances. The elders hope my involvement in this would be enough of a deterrent, but I fear they have underestimated Serpine's ambition. They refuse to believe that anyone would benefit from war, and of course, they still think that the Scepter of the Ancients is a fairy tale." Skulduggery's voice changed, but only slightly. "You think the Scepter is real?" "Oh, I know it is. Whether it can do everything the legends claim, that I do not know, but it was an object. The Scepter is quite real. It was uncovered during a recent archaeological dig, and as I understand, Gordon Edley had been searching for the Scepter for some time. As part of his research for a book about the Faceless Ones, and he paid a substantial amount of money to gain possession of it. I imagine he worked hard to verify its authenticity, and once he had done so, he realized he couldn't keep it, nor could he pass it on. Gordon Edley, for all his faults, was a good man, and if there was a chance that it did have the destructive capabilities we all heard about, he would have felt that the scepter was too powerful for anyone to possess." "Do you know what he did with it?" Stephanie said, finding her voice at last. "I don't." "But you think Serpine is willing to risk a war?" Skulduggery asked. Mr. Bliss nodded. "I think he views a truce as having outlived its usefulness, yes. I imagine that he has been waiting for this moment for quite some time, when he could seize all power and plunder every secret and invade the Faceless Ones back to the world." "You believe in the Faceless Ones?" Stephanie asked. "I do. I grew up with those teachings, and I have carried my faith through to this day. Some dismiss them, some view them as mortality tales, and some view them as stories to tell children at night. But I believe that once we were ruled by beings so evil, even their shadows shied away from them. And I believe they have been waiting to come back to punish us for our transgressions." Skulduggery cocked his head. "The elders would listen to you. They are bound by their rules. I have only learned what I can, and I have passed it on to the only person who would know what to do with it. What you do next is up to you. With you on our side," Skulduggery said, "things would be a lot easier." A small smile appeared on Mr. Bliss's face. "If I have to act, I will." Without even a good day, Mr. Bliss turned and walked away. They stayed where they were for a few minutes, then got into the canary car. Skulduggery pulled away from the curb, and they drove for a bit before Stephanie spoke. "He's kind of scary. That happens when you rarely smile. Mr. Bliss is physically the most powerful individual on the face of the planet. His strength has become legendary. So he is scary." "Oh, yes, very much so." He drove on and settled into silence. She let a few more moments to drift by. "What are you thinking?" He gave a small shrug. "Lots of clever little things." "So you do believe that the scepter is real?" "It certainly looks that way." "I suppose this is a big deal for you, huh? Finding that your gods actually existed?" "Ah, but we do not know that. If the scepter is real, its true history could have been mixed up with the legends. Its existence does not prove that it was used to drive away the Faceless Ones. Funny, I didn't think that a living skeleton would be such a skeptic. So what's our next move?" He was silent for a bit. "Right, well, we've got to work out what we need. we've got to work out what we need, how we get it, and what we need to get in order to get what we need. I think I actually understood that, Stephanie said slowly. The car went over a bump. No, it's gone again. We need the elders to take action, so we need proof that Serpent has broken the truce. We need to find out to sign the scepter, and we also need to find how to destroy the scepter. So, how do we do the first one? We will get proof that once we find the scepter. How do we find the scepter? We find the key. How do we destroy the scepter? Ah, that's a little bit of crime we have to embark on. Crime, she said with a smile. Finally.